Alright, so this is part 2 of my Johnny Depp video. I think I left off talking about how I had contacted Dee and his dad on Facebook, kind of alluding to this whole thing without directly confronting them because I wanted to get a response prior to scaring them off or whatever. Now, the thing is, we were on good terms, and his dad certainly would have responded under any normal circumstance, and Dee, I don't know, I've got to buckle up, snitching ass car, man, it's not your business whether I buckle up. Soon they'll have, alarms that, let the police know you're not buckled up, I swear. Okay, anyway, so Dee might have been a little reluctant to respond to me anyway, just because he was kind of weird ever since. I think he worried about what Jay had told me, about, things he had told her in confidence, so I think he's a little awkward about that. But what I said to him was, hey, look, I know what happened, and I'm really sorry about that. I basically just let him know I was there for him. Now, I knew in saying this that he would be more likely to respond because he was usually pretty paranoid about his reputation and any gossip going around about him. So he would have been like, wait, what are you talking about? Just to do any type, rumor, damage control, whatever, just figuring out what I was talking about. And he didn't respond. So I think he knows exactly what I was saying. And, his dad, what I said to him was, so what do you think about all this Pizzagate stuff? And, he didn't respond, and I said, you know what I think? I think it would be better for those people to jump into the ocean with a weight tied around their neck, like Jesus said, than to offend any of these little ones, which I think was a misapplication of the verse, but, and I'm paraphrasing, but at the time that was just, that was the only thing I could think to say that was cryptic, but he would get the point, because it was out of character for me to him. Last he knew I was an atheist anyway. So, but it didn't incriminate him or it didn't I wasn't making it clear that I knew anything about him. So the fact that he didn't reply was very suspicious to me because it just, to me, it hinted at a guilty conscience. So, anyway, I never heard back from them. But after that, that was just the first breadcrumb in the trail that was just leading right up to my back door in terms of Pizzagate and this child trafficking, Luciferian ritual abuse in my community. And another dot along the way was the fact that Hunter S. Thompson was somebody that had been around when I was a kid. Now, I wasn't around him. I mean, I might have seen him when I was little. I wouldn't have known who he was at the time. But I had a friend named Cece, and I grew up with her. I knew her ever since we were babies. She, her family owned a hotel and a restaurant called The Lodge, down the road from my house, and my family knew them. I mean, she was one of the only kids around at the time when I was little. Sugarloaf was pretty remote. And Hunter S. Thompson, around the time I was 4, he had visited her family and stayed in their house. They had 3 or 4 houses on this little island, that the hotel and restaurant, the lodge, was on. And, another thing that's weird is they had captive dolphins. They had Sugar, and they had, when I got older, there was kind of a controversy because they had a whole bunch of dolphins, captive, at and behind, Sugar was the feature dolphin in the lagoon behind the lodge, and then there was all these other wild dolphins they had caught, and they were keeping them, near the restaurant, and it was a really weird thing. Dolphins are used in MK Ultra programming, so I don't think it's a coincidence. Cece disappeared off to supposedly the rainforest as part of some Ivy League program when we were in high school. I don't really think that's where she was, and she has not turned out well, unfortunately. She was like a genius and a straight A student and everything, and I don't know, last I heard she was in the Keys and had a drug problem and stuff. It's very strange. And she was also supposedly like a call girl. And anyway, so Hunter S. Thompson had stayed with them, and I guess he was friends with their family. They're a very strange family, by the way. It was a strange family. So they had these like 3 or 4 houses that were next to each other. They were the only houses on the whole little island, and it was just their family. And there were several children. Like my friend's mother and her siblings. And her parents, and they had a private airstrip on that island also, and I guess they did some like skydiving things out of that airstrip, but it was very strange. It was just a strange situation, and Hunter S. Thompson stayed there for like 2 months or something, at least once, and supposedly they were the swine family inspiration in his book Generation of Swine, and supposedly had something to do with him dumping a severed pig's head in their toilet, something like that. That's just stuff, bits and pieces I picked up from talking to them. At the time I idolized him. I thought he was great, so I just thought it was really cool. So he was involved. He was down there, and this was one of the families that I am almost positive was involved, because my friend Jay, she remembered Cece being in the rituals, and she remembered that her father was a really bad man. She pointed him out as a very bad man. She said he was the worst. I don't know, she didn't go into why, but he was like the worst of the people she remembered being part of the rituals. And so now see what happened with Johnny. That took place in Miami, so I don't necessarily think it was connected. But I suspect Johnny is a programmed multiple also. So I really don't know. I'm going to guess he probably has known Hunter S. Thompson a long time. Sometimes it looks creepy to me, like maybe he was kind of handled by him or something. But I'm not implying that there was a connection there. But what is interesting is Hunter S. Thompson is also connected to Bohemian Grove, which my friend Jay, she told me that her father had, as she put it, done time at Bohemian Grove when he was young. And it looks like these people just all knew each other. I contacted Ed Opperman about this first, and he was really cool. He looked into a lot of stuff privately. He tried to get as much information as he could about my friend's dad, and we talked back and forth, and I really like Ed. I've said that before, but other than that, I've told a lot of people. I've told like Titus Ross, and nobody really wanted to do anything with my information. Nobody mentioned it ever that I've heard. But when I told Isaac Cappy, which I told him about everything, including my friend and everything. I contacted him within a couple days of him, coming out with the Periscope thing about Seth Green, and he called me as soon as he read it, because I sent it, the message, and within like 10, 15 minutes, he called me, called my number, because I'd given it to him. And so, I just loved him from that moment on, because that was just so sincere, and like he just had so much passion, and he he shared my story without naming me. But then eventually I did, because I did actually come out publicly on Twitter, attaching my name to the whole thing, because people had accused him of just making baseless allegations and but what they didn't understand was Isaac was protecting people like me, because at the time I told him I was too afraid to attach my name to the story, and he took the bullet for me. He came out with it, and he didn't name me, so he looked like he was just irresponsible or some quack, but he knew that the more he shared stories like this, the more it would embolden people that might actually have some type of evidence, or just more credibility, whatever. And that was, his stated intention. And I really respected him for that. And I was so furious that other people didn't understand that's what he was doing. Because I had told all these truthers on YouTube, my information, and they weren't interested. I mean, I guess you could say because I didn't have any evidence, but there was plenty of stuff they could have corroborated, and at least share, because I had information that would have connected dots for a lot of researchers and given them leads and stuff, and they could have corroborated so much of what I said by looking into things like records in the town and whatever. There were murders that I told them I knew who did the murders, and I even knew that the guy that they eventually pinned these murders on was just one of the cult members that tried to escape with his family during a hurricane evacuation, using that as an excuse. Normally they were required to leave collateral in the form of a family member, which is why the whole time I knew my friend and her family growing up, they never all left town at the same time. And it wasn't because they had pets or anything. They weren't allowed to. They had to leave somebody behind just in case they were trying to jump ship. And this guy, he left town and tried to use the fact that he was evacuating as an excuse. And he and I believe it was his wife and her niece or something like that, they were all murdered. And they killed him in the way that the victims that had been sacrificed on Big Pine Key had been killed, by cutting out the hearts and stuff. And then they had him, so it made it look like he killed his wife and his niece that way, and then killed himself. And look, it turns out we found out who the secret killer was on Big Pine Key all this time. It was this guy. It was like 20 years later, but it was really just an opportunistic thing. They were tying up loose ends. And I did talk to the police about that, and they weren't interested, and they even admitted to me they didn't want my information, and they didn't want to solve the crimes. They, anyway, that's another story. I only have a few minutes left, but the point is, I felt like what I had to say was, if anybody was like me and looking into all this stuff and trying to connect as many dots as possible and uncover secret networks, I had information about how they use these elite vineyards as some type of breeding / programming / trafficking. They're like front companies, front businesses, like the Rothschild winery, and also Jefferson Vineyard. Nobody ever did anything about that. Or I think Outram is the only person I've ever heard actually touch on this, but I hadn't told him, so it was just independent investigation. But I always appreciated Isaac for actually seeing what was important about my story and just taking the risk, taking the chance. And look, when I did come out on Twitter, and I had a lot of followers very quickly because Fiona and Isaac, they shared my information, and they, people, I got 800 followers like overnight, and then, they just kept growing. And so a lot of people saw these tweets where I confirmed what Isaac said, and I said I was the person that told him. And I attracted the attention of a lot of like Johnny Depp trolls, people that were like obsessed with him or whatever. And they were because some of these trolls, they like operate fan clubs and stuff, and they know people that know Johnny. And one of them, she contacted a friend of his, and he said something to me. He said that I would be hearing from Johnny's attorneys. Well, guess what? I never did. It's been like over a year and a half. I don't even know. It's been a long time. Yeah, I have not heard from anybody because he doesn't want to go there. He knows this tape exists. And, who knows? It could be a blackmail tape. It could be something to do with, when he got famous, like maybe this was like a blackmail tape they had on him. I don't know. But I think it's very weird that I've never heard from any attorneys. And that was what Isaac called the So Sue Me challenge. And if people can't understand or appreciate, the how clever it is to do that, and also how brave, I don't know what to tell them, but that was what he was up to. That's what the method to his madness was. I have like 15 seconds. I don't feel like I'm done talking about this, so I might even make another installment. Anyway, let me know what you think.